I always feel a little guilty when I ask Linkara to record something for me because it invariably involves him doing something kind of silly or just saying some really ridiculous lines, and he actually always goes the extra mile for me. He was actually the one to suggest the idea where he kind of picks up my remains from the explosion in the Final Fantasy VIII finale, and so this is the follow-up to it. I'm very envious of Poyo the robot, actually. I know he's kind of supposed to be a clone of mine, but in many ways Poyo is somewhat superior for filming in that, one, he's smaller, and two, he's probably, even though he's just basically a series of cardboard boxes and tubes, he's a little more robust than poor Burton. As I said, Burton is a very fragile type of guy, and as a puppet, he's really not that good. He's not very articulate. And he's actually pretty big. He's actually kind of like quarter the size of a person, so he's not that easy to go swinging around because he's got a fair amount of bulk to him. He's, being a dustbuster and a lot of PVC pipes, he's really not meant to move all that much. I keep meaning to go back and improve him at some point, but I've never actually managed to find a voice for Burton either. So, and I think that I'll go back to this a lot is. I don't like to use the puppet that much because it makes things a lot more complicated because I don't have a puppeteer, and if I was doing it, things get a little complicated like they did here. These last two reviews, this and the Final Fantasy VIII finale, are probably the most complicated and difficult things to shoot that I've ever done, in two ways. One is, the Final Fantasy VIII review is probably the hardest I've ever worked on a review. It probably had the most complicated shots, the fighting, the setup, the special effects, and it's probably the fastest I've ever had to turn around a video. I've done videos faster, but none more difficult and under more pressure, because I had to get that done before I really moved out. So there was a fair amount of pressure to do that. This one is different in that this is by far the longest review that's been in production in any way. I think anyone who's talked to me that much has known I've always had clones of Bruce Lee on the back burner. I've had it on the burner for literally just under 2 years, if not a little more than 2 years. It's give or take. And there are a lot of things that have come up to put it off, the camera getting knocked out being one of them. But really it was, from the beginning, I wanted to do at least 2 clones for this review. And so when I wrote the script a long time ago, I had planned it for, like, 3 or 4 clones would be kind of, like, swarming around the couch and kind of throwing their little commentary. So I had all these various clones planned. And they weren't really characters. This was actually before Dr. Insano, before any of this. I just had, like, various exaggerated aspects of myself as different clones. It was kind of like Multiplicity, where there'd be kind of one really angry one, there'd be one that's kind of effeminate, and things like that. And I could never get the shot because I was in my room, and there was simply no way that I could split screen more than one other clone. The limit you ever saw that was Hell's Kitchen, when I had, one other guy. In Final Fantasy VIII, I had one other guy. I could just not get the widescreen aspect, and that's the one way the camera I have now is better. It's widescreen for one. But I just could not film it in my room, and I didn't want to film it anywhere else because it would have been kind of jarring. So I filmed it in this new house, which is very jarring, and I had it on a couch, and it was widescreen, so it was a lot better this way. And I like this review, and I'm actually still very uncomfortable with it for actually a lot of the reasons that people on the website have listed. They say that it's way too involved. They'd rather just have me talking in front of the camera. I don't have to do this gimmickry with all the other characters. They don't sometimes they think Dr. Insane's a little too far. They think the bum copy is a little too much. They'd rather just see me talk about a movie. And so, you know what? I actually kind of agree with you in the sense that this is probably as complicated as these reviews will ever get. I'm trying to scale back a little bit and kind of stay true to the formula and, stay true to the message of these, which is really we're here to watch these movies. You're not really here to watch me kind of jack around with all these different costumes and things like that. It's funny when I do it, but I understand what you're saying. It's like I really shouldn't do all that much. That said, I think this is really funny, and I think the clones work really well. And this is actually when I started thinking of the various characters. And I like this review, although, and I'll say this again, even though I had a much better place to shoot it, I had a much better camera to shoot it, I'm still not entirely happy with the results in the sense that, you know what, there's two ways to think about it. One is, I'm still kind of doing these little silly reviews. It's on a stinking Bruce Lee movie. It doesn't have to be fine art. And I agree with you. That said, I still broke some cardinal rules, and anyone who knows anything about filming knows that if there's one thing you shouldn't do is that you should not ever film split screen outside, and you should never do it in front of windows. And sure enough, every time you see the split screen, you see windows. And I probably shouldn't even tell you this, but now that I've told you that you'll notice it, is that anytime you see split screen, I think you instinctively look for the seams, like where the split screens are, and I don't think it's that hard to find. And the main reason is, the reason you don't use windows is that as you shoot these things, the lighting conditions change. If you're not in full control of the lighting, you're going to see seams in the split screen. So, if I shoot one scene in the split screen and I have to go change costumes, it's going to be 5, 10, 15 minutes later. And even if it's not a significant amount of time later, lighting conditions change. They change all the time, in subtle ways, but sometimes a cloud can pass over the sun. The lighting outside the window is going to change. So when the lighting changes, you're going to see a seam unless you do some serious care to color correct. And I actually did have to color correct it. I filmed this at the absolute worst possible time. I filmed it around sundown, like around 4 p.m. And so the lighting condition changed a lot, to where it was bright light outside to when it was complete nighttime outside. So if you look, you will probably not see a lot of great continuity between shots. You'll see it's dark outside in the windows. You'll see it's light outside in the windows. The split screens were actually okay, but there still are differences. And so, ideally, I probably should have filmed this when I had finished getting my studio complete, when I had full control of the lighting. I just kind of wanted to get this done. I'd been working on this for a long time. I wanted to get it shot, and I think it looks okay. It's not great in terms of effects, but once I kind of settled on this one, in the sense that it didn't have to be great, because we're still talking about a freaking Clones of Bruce Lee movie, and I actually kind of think, in a way, it's kind of adds a little charm to it that the split screening is really not that good. And maybe I'm just kind of making excuses for myself. But this movie, I think the main reason I had all the foo-furor with the clones and things like that is there are a few moments I really wanted to get when it comes to these clones. And one is, I thought Dr. Insano was a really good fit for this one, because there's a lot of mad science involved in this one, and the mad scientists in this movie are terrible. Like, this guy's super weapons are, he creates a device, like some kind of chemical that destroys plants, and then he creates men made of bronze. And like at every turn, he's like, "Soon I will conquer the whole world," with his weed killer. And so I really thought Dr. Insano was a really good fit for that one. And there are a few moments I really wanted to get. And one of them was when Bruce, I think I settled on Clones of Bruce Lee. There are a lot of disposable Bruce Lee exploitation flicks around, and they're all really bad. Like, you could do a review on every one of these things. Bruce Lee Fights Back from the Grave actually is kind of one of the more boring ones. It's actually kind of just a passable chop-socky flick with just a really unforgivable gimmick attached to it. But where Clones of Bruce Lee really sold me was the karate chop to the woman's throat, which for some reason I must have spent like 30 minutes just going back and watching that scene over and over again, because I don't know, brutality to women is hilarious. And then, the moment I wanted to get was after the chop, all the clones in the room would just go, "Oh!" and kind of leer back. And I think I got that one because I really like the movie Stardust, and there's a scene in there where the Greek choir of dead ghosts, or not dead ghosts, redundant, but when the ghosts see one of their own guys get run through, they all kind of like wince in sympathy and go, "Oh, that had to hurt." I love that moment. And actually, the ghosts are probably the weakest part of the movie, but that was a really good moment. And so that was maybe my unconscious homage to Stardust, because that's a really good movie. But I really wanted to get that moment, and so like I must have rewritten the script 4 times over the past 2 years, just trying to get it locked down and actually really shorten it up, because the original script for this was probably about an hour. It was just too long. At that point, I probably should have just done a riff track to the thing and have done with it. But that was the other reason I released this in 2 parts, was this is still about 35, 40 minutes long, and that is kind of too long to be sitting in front for a blip video to load. I thought splitting it into 2 was a little better, and actually there is kind of a logical division point for this, where there's 2 missions the Bruces go on. So I thought doing one mission and then the other mission was pretty good. But yeah, this was by far the longest I've ever spent on a review, and I wasn't working on it all the time. I had kind of set it aside because the room was too small, so I was kind of waiting for a better place to shoot it. Either downstairs in the same house when I had better control of the lighting. When I had better costumes, that was one thing. And the funny thing is, I can't actually remember how I came across the clones of Bruce Lee. I think I was looking for public domain movies from a Mr. Science Theater thing, and I don't know, I got on some kind of kick where I was checking out exploitation flicks and things like that, and I think the name of it just... Chong Li! Chong Li! I'm sorry. I have to shout that every time I see Bolo. Man, I can't remember. I think either somebody emailed me links of really bad movies to do, but man, I can't remember where I found it. I think I watched some clips online. And, yeah, the Chop to the Throat really sold me, and the Mad Scientist was really classic. The fact there are, like, no less than 2 Mad Scientists, actually. Oh, I remember another thing that really sold me was the gold smuggler who decides that burying the gold in the ground is a really clever move. There's a lot of howler lines in this one, and I can't decide if it's probably just really bad translation. Probably makes a lot more sense, although, kind of doubt it. The other thing that really drew me to this one is the fact that none of these guys look like Bruce Lee. None of them. It kind of plays on the stereotype that all Chinese dudes look alike, and they don't. You know, they really don't. But it kind of seems silly that, like, do Chinese guys think all Chinese guys look alike? To the fact that, like, they're casting guys who look nothing like Bruce Lee and passing them off as Bruce Lee. I don't know. I'm digging a hole here. I'm in a really kind of a gray area. Moving on, but this has nothing to do with Bruce Lee. They never use the Bruce Lee concept in any of these Bruceploitation films. Like, at no point do they play up the advantage of this guy being Bruce Lee. None of these guys fight like Bruce Lee. They just kind of copy the mannerisms. I think one thing I cut out of this a lot was all of these guys try their best to kind of get that whole mannerism thing. Like, none of them try to do the voice. You know how Bruce Lee has that really high pitch, yeah, you know, that kawaii thing he does, but none of them really copy the voice. But they all know one thing that he likes to do, and that's kind of do that thing where he flicks his thumb across his nose, where he's kind of clearing his nose out, and he kind of does this little dance around thing where he kind of assumes a stance. And one of these guys really likes to do the thing where he stomps on a guy when he's down and kind of like makes his metal face when he's stomping on a guy, like, ah.
Looks good, didn't he?
But man, it just doesn't work.
I know he looks nothing like Bruce Lee.
What's spooky about this movie, and probably another reason I picked it, is the fact that this is kind of a creepy movie at some point, especially when Chai Lo starts talking to his henchmen about how he's going to kill Bruce, and one of them goes, "Let's shoot him in front of the camera, and that'll look like an accident. And then we'll capitalize on his popularity for years," which is not only kind of spooky in the sense that that's exactly what they're doing, like cashing in on Bruce Lee's popularity, but it's almost identical to the way Brandon Lee died when he was shooting The Crow. And I'm not suggesting that it was some kind of gold smuggler had Brandon Lee killed. I'm not saying that, but he got shot, and you know his popularity kind of spiked, and like. They're talking about how to kill Bruce Lee, and that's exactly how Brandon Lee died, and you're just like, wow, that's kind of uncomfortable. I just don't get that guy. There's so much of that guy just kind of prancing around going, ooh, like that. There's one scene where the guy's like, boss, the Bruce Lees are coming, ooh. And you're like, I can't believe there was a guy who dubbed that. Like, this guy would just kind of prance around going, ooh, boss, the Bruces are coming, ah. Never understood this movie's obsession with close-ups either. We get way too familiar with a lot of these guys' faces than I ever really wanted to. These guys were kind of silly because these guys are supposed to be professional hitmen, and they're like the most identifiable people in the world. I actually thought for a long time on who these guys were supposed to look like. I think my alternative for the guy in blue was Steve Guttenberg. To this day, I'm not really sure what that was supposed to be. Honestly, the first time I heard it, I thought he said, "You'll pay for that, you dirty Jew." And it doesn't. If you listen to it a few times, it doesn't sound like Jew. The agreement on the forum is it sounds like he kind of interrupts his own thought by saying, "You'll pay for that, you dirty," and then he looks over at his friend and goes, "Kill." I guess that makes sense, but it really still doesn't work.
That's the best idea you've had.
But for all their talk about just having this guy killed and making it look like an accident, at no point in any of their preparations did they try to make it look like an accident. Like, they send just guys to beat him to death, and this guy's trying to maintain his cover. So, you know, he's basically committing a blatant murder by having a guy beaten to death just offset. Or they're trying to have the guy stabbed to death by stuntmen in front of the camera, no less. And I just don't get it. I don't get how gold smuggling works when you're a film producer. Burying it there was a clever move.
I will be digging the gold out of the ground.
Anyway, yeah, there were a lot of costume changes to do with this, and I really don't think I'm going to go this complex again, at least not without some kind of crew to back me up on this, because this was really complicated, and when I'm kind of doing this all on my own, it tends to look a little rushed, it tends to look a little cheap, and I think it works a lot better. I think you're right in that it works a lot better when I just kind of try to stay straightforward, not get too self-indulgent. I think sometimes even the Angry Nerd got a little self-indulgent in a few cases. You know, I like the guy, and I think the guy does good stuff, but there's a few cases, like where Texas Chainsaw Massacre review for one, and I remember he did one where he kind of battles Super Mecha Death Christ, and they're funny, and they're really well done, actually. I'm not complaining against that, but I don't think they're his stronger episodes, just because you kind of want to see him talk about the games. You want to see him talk about the movies. And I think I kind of fell into that trap with this one. And I didn't want to rewrite it again, and I did think it was really funny, and it is really funny. So, in a way, I'm apologizing for this one, and in a way, I'm not apologizing for this one, because I still think it works really well. I think if there was ever a time I was going to get a little self-indulgent for having kind of clones running around talking shit and, you know, kind of goofing on the mad science, I think this was the one. So I don't think you have to worry about me getting kind of crazy on you with the special effects and with the clones. I don't think Dr. Insano's going to be running around, you know, being wacky all the time. And that was actually kind of a tricky one, because I had turned Dr. Insano kind of antagonistic at the end of the finale, and all of a sudden I had him written into this one, and I really wanted to do this next now that I was in the new place. And so I was like, well, why the hell is Dr. Insano running around? He tried to kill me. And so I kind of swept that under the rug by just saying he's kind of sorry, and like he needed a place to stay, so he kind of came hat in hand and asked if he could stay. I was like, okay, fine, but you got to stop killing people. But I don't know if you noticed, but the gold bricks that he buried in that clever hiding spot are basically just bricks that are spray-painted gold, which is great. It was good for me to get this one done with, because I was kind of sick about thinking about this one, and I really wanted to get it done. You know, it was just kind of one of those, I kept putting it off for some reason. You know, I had it done, why not shoot it? And I think what I kept getting afraid of was all the split screening, all the editing that I was going to do, and this was a very difficult one to edit, because there was so much, you know, kind of lighting and color correction to do. The shooting, very complex, very strenuous. I had to shoot that all in one night, and I was kind of rushing all the way through it. It was hot in there, a lot of costume changes, a lot of that, and I'm not making excuses for the lack of quality. I'm not on that. I'm just kind of explaining that this was one that was, when I wrote it, I was going, oh, this is going to be a lot of work, and I never wanted to get this one shot because it was going to be a lot of work. Same with the Final Fantasy VIII one. So now that I got those done, it's really good that I've done that, because now I can kind of move on to other, even better things. So I've got all this stuff that you guys are looking forward to, which is great. And so it was just kind of one of those things where I had it shot, wanted to get it done, and I finally did it. So it's good to finally finish with those things at last.
Good luck.
The movie looks a little distorted in comparison to the normal footage, because I did have to stretch it to the widescreen. I tried to make it look as good as I could. The only choices I had were to either stretch it, which I think it looks okay, or to keep it in its normal aspect ratio and kind of like vertically letterbox it. I think that would have been a lot more distracting, I think, than the way I did it. Maybe you disagree. I don't know. You'll notice the one thing they do to make all the Bruce Lees look like Bruce Lee is they always wear sunglasses, like, all the time. They're at the beach, on the street. Guy's getting out of the shower, he's got his sunglasses on. Because, you know, Bruce Lee is just famous for wearing sunglasses. It's mainly just to cover up as much of their face as possible, but actually, most of these other guys are Bruce Lee clones, too, at least impersonators, like Secret Agent Chuck. He is supposed to be another impersonator, and I don't know why he didn't get tapped as Bruce Lee number 4. There's one guy who wrote a comment in complaining about the Revolution of the Mask ad, and what's genius about it, the comment is, I can't tell if he was joking or not, because I get so many people who complain about these things and who, like the Dirty Harry thing, who don't get the abrupt ending to that was kind of a joke. And so I couldn't tell if the guy complaining about the ad, even though he had ad blocker on and not being able to get rid of it, I honestly couldn't tell if he was joking or not, because I get some pretty serious people who complain about very similar things. I actually had nothing. I was actually just going to blur this out until I had the idea of the fact that Linkar had brainwashed me into liking Revolution of the Mask, so I thought this worked really well. I think another idea I had was like some kind of ESPN sports ticker. I actually think this works really well. There's actually a lot of titties in this movie that you don't see. This beach scene goes on for about 5 minutes. That was another moment I really wanted to get. Oh, the pink shorts and the... Yeah, I honestly thought the other Chuck was walking around nude, because his suit is basically the exact same color as his skin, and the tape transfer... I didn't transfer this from tape myself. I think this is a bootleg I got on DVD from somebody. The transfer for this is really bad, and actually, thank God for that, because I think even the movie was repulsed at the sight of the Bruce Lee impersonator in tiny pink shorts. Forget where I was. All right, I was talking about titties. There's titties in this scene. I scaled the movie up to a kind of a distorted perspective to scale just her head into the frame. You actually see her full frontal, I think, in this part.
I swore I would not reveal.
I cut that out. Actually, I was kind of lucky that the chop to the throat didn't have any nipples in it, because I probably would have had to blur those out. But there's another really funny scene that I didn't talk about. I cut it for time. Dr. Nye is actually... I'm sorry, I can't watch that one without laughing my ass off. I love the super slow-mo. These bruises will just flat out fucking murder you. Like, I can't imagine how he did this without just killing the woman. But, Dr. Nye in this movie is so pimp. There's a scene where he talks about how he's going to destroy the whole world. He gets his good laugh in, and then he's like, I'm going to go get a drink. And then he goes into his room, which is like this, like the ultimate Playboy mansion type room. It's all swank, and it's got all like this, it's got all this great furniture. It's got a bar. And so he goes to the bar, he starts making a drink, and all of a sudden, like, these 4 just topless women just start running in, and they just start rubbing all over him, and Nye is like, oh, yeah, this is how I roll. Dr. Nye, mad science. He's like, let me feel them titties, and, like, he starts feeling them up, and he's doing them, and you don't see him doing them, but, like, there's just naked women just hanging all over this guy, and I was like, that's where it's at, man. Science is where it's at. But there's no way I could have shown that one, because there were titties all over that frame. I was like, there's no way I could put a Revolution of the Mask banner. I would have covered up like 95% of the screen. There was just titties falling all over the place.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
The other thing I love about Dr. Nye is the fact that he doesn't dress like a scientist. He's very high class. He's got these tailored suits, and he doesn't do his science. He has all these other guys doing his science for him, and he's taking all the credit. He's like, soon I'll conquer the world with your invention. and I actually think I figured out why he wants the... I can't decide if this is a plot hole or not. Like, why he thinks that he'll conquer the world with his weed killer. And I kind of thought in hindsight that he understood that his bronze people might, like, unconsciously start chewing on grass and that would kill them or something like that. Like, maybe he foresaw the fact that his bronze men had some kind of chewing reflex, and so he wanted to destroy all plant life on the earth so that wouldn't happen. But I realized that was stupid. Like, how could you ever foresee the fact that they would just, like, if somebody threw grass in their face, they would, like, instinctively eat it? I was like, that's dumb. He can't... No way he could have possibly seen that. So I was like, the only thing I could see is, like, he really thinks his weed killer is going to just, like, cause the nations to kneel at his feet. He's like, ah. And that was another favorite moment where he's like, the guy's laughing. He's like, silence.
If you had to test it out.
I was just fascinated by this guy because he's so pimp, and it was really hard for me to make any edits to his scenes because I was just enthralled every time he was on the screen. This guy laughs at everything he says. He'll say things like, you need to get back to work. or like, you'll take care of the Bruce Lees while I go to safety. And like, just every time he starts laughing, and
And tomorrow
this guy just takes so much joy in his work. I just loved it. So many things would drive this guy to the brink of hilarity, and he only really earned it one time when he said, soon Thailand, tomorrow the world. But like just other things, such innocuous things, what he would just find hysterical. He's like, I'm going to the supermarket, ha 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 ha. And there's all the other guys would laugh along with him. It was, in many ways, he's even goofier than the poor Dr. Insano.
Fight like Bruce Lee. Sounds like
Say what you want about the guy. At least Dr. Insano has a plan. He doesn't just get Weed Killer and throw it at you. He doesn't make guys into bronze for no real reason. And just like, does he really expect people to fear these guys running around in their underwear who are just? And they're not even unbeatable. They're just made of bronze. Like you can still kick their ass. They just don't bruise or something. I don't know. I also love the balls and the scientists who they're like, yeah, we can take on Bruce Lee. They attack. But lest I make this movie sound like it's one of those films you'd kind of like to track down and watch, I would really encourage you not to, because this is one of the longer movie watching experiences you'll ever have. I kind of cut it down to the really funny moments, but by and large, this movie is literally like 90% just really bad kung fu fighting and like really bad choreography with the. I really hate these chop-socky flicks that have the exaggerated sound effects. Like every time a guy throws a punch, it makes some kind of huge whooshing noise, and the really exaggerated punching sounds, and like just it's not good, and it's not filmed well, and like I basically everything you see here is kind of the dialogue, which is really only about 20 minutes of the movie, and so that's why you're really not seeing that much fighting, is because the movie has so much fighting that it's really boring. You've really seen enough kung fu fighting after the training montage, and beyond that, you got all this crap going on with the naked guys and the underwear and all that. It's just it's really an endurance trial. I love this scene. This goes on for so long, and this is one scene I actually had cut. But this guy just wails on these guys for like a minute. And it's just funny. The guy's like Dr. Knight's just laughing the whole time. He's like, good bronze. Yes, wonderful. But with all the fighting, it's really, really boring. It's like I said, I cut it down to the funny bits, and there's so much fighting. And if you're lured by my promise of titties all over the place, I think in this day and age of the internet, like if you want to see titties, there's really easier ways to see them. You don't need to track down a bootleg copy of Clones of Bruce Lee to see Asian titties anymore. It's maybe back in the day in the 80s you might have thought about it, but now really just look it up yourself. This is not the kind of effort you want to go to. And actually that's kind of interesting. That kind of goes to my point about some of these movies that you see nowadays that are kind of these PG-13 jiggle fests. Like, I just question why sometimes. Like Barbed Wire is a good example. Like I remember Nostalgia Critic did Barbed Wire, and does that movie not just seem pointless to you? Like the entire movie is predicated on the fact that Pamela Anderson is friggin' hot and she has enormous titties. Okay, fair enough. But
you must learn to be patient.
if you're not going to offer us anything new, like if you like either you're going to give us titties or you're not, and if you're not, there's easier ways to see titties. Like you don't need to tease me with this video. I just don't see the point. Like, why rent a semi-porn when you can just kind of rent a full-on porn? And, Pamela Anderson has even done porns that you can find. You don't need to couch it in some kind of Casablanca knockoff. Like, you don't need to put whipped cream on this little particular sundae for me. You don't need to kind of toy with it. Either just, make a porn or don't make a porn. Making half a porn doesn't get us anywhere, you know what I mean? Ooh, I'm digging myself another hole. Let me see, how to get out of that. Oh, that stupid guy's eating grass, right. But somebody emailed me a while back and said that they asked if I got the inspiration from this. I think apparently there's some kind of like DVD box set of like exploitation films or Bruceploitation films now that those were not available when I started this review. So no, that was not my inspiration, but apparently this is a little easier to track down than it was in the past. I think there is a box set that exists with all of these exploitation films on them. Clones of Bruce Lee being one of them. I'd actually be interested to see if the copy they had has a credit sequence or the ending to it. What was really sad about this is at some point I kind of thought, you know, there might have been a good story here, and I started thinking, I'm really sick for thinking that, but this is another one of those reasons I shouldn't write screenplays, because I actually started thinking about how, you know, you could kind of make this a good movie when you start thinking about, like, what if you were you woke up and all of a sudden somebody told you you were the clone of, like, the greatest martial arts superstar of all time, and, you know, you had this... You know, you had all this memories and knowledge, but you weren't that guy. You know, it was kind of like you had this kind of Blade Runner-ish feeling to it, where you kind of question the existence of a soul, especially when there's two other Bruce Lees with the exact same, you know, skill set and memories as you. It kind of makes you question a few things. And I was like, you actually could have made this kind of a philosophical, existential character study of the three various Bruce Lees as they try to find meaning in their lives. I needed some medication badly. And then I started thinking, you know, if you actually resolve the fact that you can clone someone with all of their skills, memories, and knowledge from a vial of their blood, like, you could really wreak some serious havoc. Like I'm not doubting the brilliance of cloning Bruce Lee several times and forming an international super spy team. That's pretty fucking brilliant. But, you know, you could do scientists, you could do Einstein, you could clone yourself. Like, why wouldn't the scientist, like, try to clone himself and, you know, kind of combine and multitask his efforts? There's other martial arts superstars you could copy. You could have your own rival Chuck Norris team. And then I started thinking, like, oh, what if you did a sequel to this, the clones of Chuck Norris, you know? Like, all of a sudden, like, Dr. Nye breaks out of prison. He clones his Bruce Lee's a bunch more times. But wait, no, the British guy, he clones Chuck Norris 3 times. And then he sends the Chuck Norrises to fight the fucking Bruce Lees. And then you got the classic showdown, like, cubed, right? So, you know, then you got that classic scene 3 times, only they're in a cage. And it's 3-on-3. And there's one Chuck with a beard. There's one Chuck without a beard. And then there's, like, the black Chuck. Like, somebody, I don't know, spilled coffee in the third vial. I don't know. All of a sudden, you know, and then I got the clones of Jean-Claude Van Damme, the clones of Stallone. And I was like, oh, clones of Stallone, that's a title that would sell. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I started writing down all these ideas of clones. Like, you know, you open up the floodgates when you got a super spy team of Bruce Lees. You could have specialized teams of clones that do various things. Like, you know, I mean, okay, you wouldn't have much use for it. You could have a team of clones of Bob Saget. Like, maybe you need somebody who needs roasting really bad. So you got 3 Bob Sagets who run around and just insult the fuck out of him. or I know, like, the clones of Eddie Van Halen, because what's better than one Eddie Van Halen is, like, 3 Eddies Van Halen. Because they could just, like, all 3 play Eruption at the same time, and, like, the universe would explode from the awesomeness. I don't know, but yeah, I started thinking the cloning thing would start to get too far, because I don't think I've ever seen a movie that actually just outright said, you know, oh, these are perfect clones in every way, like, just from a science standpoint. Sometimes you get, like, a magic guy or a guy who has, like, this machine who can kind of Xerox copy them, but never, like, a test tube clone that comes out and it's just Bruce Lee. Oh my God! And they killed one. They killed Bruce Lee number 3. I'd like, how do you? Like, oh. They chopped out one with a death ray. Then I started realizing this guy has a death ray, and he's still cloning Bruce Lee. Like, why don't you weaponize the death ray and sell that? You would, like, you could use the death ray, take over the world. You got a fucking death ray. Like, why are you wasting time with martial artists who know snake kung fu and the cute kitten and the... Like, okay, I'm not doubting cloning Bruce Lee is cool, but you, like, Bruce Lee versus Death Ray, we just showed Death Ray wins. At the very least, you could sell the patent of the Death Ray to the Chinese army, and, like, apparently it's affordable. You could make a fair amount of money. You don't need to take over the world if you're rich. And hell, like, why not just make movies with their clones of Bruce Lee? You could, like, make clones of Bruce Lee, the movie. I don't know, and then he gets his clones of Bruce Lee, and then he wants to kill them all, but one, and then, like all of a sudden he thinks, like, his one Bruce Lee is just gonna beat up the world. Like, I don't know. And wouldn't you be afraid that, like, cloning Bruce Lee, you'd clone the heart defect that killed him? Like, allegedly in this movie that was a heart defect that killed him. I don't know, but This movie really got me disturbed. It got me thinking way too much, and really, it's just a chop-socky titty flick. And yeah, I wasn't feeling well after this movie. It's not very good. It's not very good at all. And like, I know sometimes you guys might be tempted to go track it down, but seriously, like, I would really just rather watch a Bruce Lee movie any day of the week. Okay, well, this review's wrapping up. So as for what's next, the board game review may take a little while just because I want to make sure... I'm still kind of planning out how I want to approach this one. I got a lot of games. The concept behind that review is... There's a lot of games that had videos along with them, like DVDs or mainly VHS tapes. And so I tracked down basically all of the games I could find with VHS tapes, and there are a shocking number of them, actually, way more than I thought there would be. In fact, there's even a golf game that has a VHS tape, which, yeah, yikes. But I was going to do this review of all these games with VHS tapes, and so that may take a little while. There's a few video games I want to do. Like, I still really want to get back to Ripper. I would love to do that one again. But there actually is another movie that has inspired me a great deal. I don't normally do movies unless it really catches my interest, and this one really did in a big way. Ed Glazer showed it to me when we were doing the epic battle in Chicago. He showed us a bunch of Turkish movies. This one is not a Turkish movie, but he showed me one that is very, very good review material, and it stars a very familiar star of Spoony Experiment infamy. So you'll see it soon. I actually think I'm going to get that one written real fast. But thanks for listening. I know it's been quite a ride.